Howdy, with this video, I want to go over the poetry essay, make sure you understand what's happening there. I have the material up on the content page. Right now it's on the very bottom of it because people are still working on essay number 2. I'm doing this video on Thursday the 6th. So people are still working on essay number 2 and maybe getting going on the responses for the poetry side. But I want to go over the essay, make sure this is up there for anybody who's working ahead. To go over the schedule real quickly, we pushed the due date for essay number 2 to Friday the 7th, and the due date for responses 8 and 9 to the Saturday the 10th. No, Saturday the 8th, I'm sorry. Hopefully everybody has plenty of time to do that. But on Monday the 10th, the first paragraph of essay number 3 is due, and after that, the full draft's due on Tuesday. I'm not going to read this in detail. I'm probably going to make sure you're quoting properly, citing things properly, using a slash between line breaks, things like that. Hopefully, at this point, you're able to evaluate your own writing and revise your own and edit your own writing. And that's what the self-review of essay number 3 is going to prompt you to do. The essay is due on Wednesday. Response number 10 is going to be a review of the course. All late work's due on Thursday, and then I've got a day to grade all these essays. Then I'm going to post final grades on Saturday. I have to have my grades to Northeast State on Sunday. So when I post final grades in D2L on Saturday, if there's a problem, you want to let me know. And I'll try and do that as early as I can on Saturday, so you have time to do that. But Northeast State's asking for my grades on Sunday because classes start on Monday. Because they moved up the start date for the semester. So that's going to be exciting. Uh, Getting all the grades in and getting all my other courses up for the next semester. That's not your problem, though. So we're down to the last week. Be sure to let me know if you have questions about any of that. To go over the essay number 3 assignment, I don't know if this one's easier, but it's very different. It's probably writing in a way you haven't done before, and I'll show you why here in a second. But the poetry essay, you're going to write an 800-word minimum explication of one of the following poems, and you have 8 poems to choose from there, and they're all copied right after this first page. And an explication is a line-by-line informed analysis. You can also go stanza by stanza, informed response to a given poem. That's just you and the poem. You should not be doing any research in this essay. And basically the idea, explications literally means unfolding the poem, telling us what it means. If you're like me and you prefer to summarize things and Moby Dick is about a whale and a one-legged sea captain and they fight. That's not what an explication is. An explication is you got to explain what happened. This is actually an incredibly important critical thinking skill. When you have to fire somebody, when you get to be a manager, you got to generally write down why and explicate why you want this person out of your organization, or you're going to be getting tagged on your unemployment insurance, right? If you build a bridge and the bridge collapses, you might be called into the office to explicate, unfold what happened that would cause a bridge to collapse or something like that. Hopefully, nothing bad like that happens, but it's kind of if you're a church-going person, the odds are you have a preacher who explicates Bible passages. They start with one passage, kind of unpack that passage. They might relate it to other parts of the Bible, things like that. But quite often, sermons are just a different form of explication, if that helps at all. But your explication should not include biography of any kind. Most of these you can't, like one author, William Carlos Williams, fairly famous poet, kind of looking at a more obscure poem of his. But I don't care that he was a doctor in New Jersey or anything like that. I just don't care. Don't put it in your explication. It's not important. This is just you and the poem. And you should have all that punctuation. You should be able to use 7 of these terms. On the content page, there's a little handout that goes over these terms. All these are open form, free verse poems. So we're not going to be worrying too much about rhyme, scheme, and foot and meter. But you only use 7 of them there. One term you're probably definitely going to use is ambiguity. I picked these poems because they're kind of ambiguous. There's different possible interpretations. That's what makes reading these explications interesting on my side. If there's only one answer to each poem, it'd get pretty boring after a while, right? No it or you and avoid got. The poem's Damp Virginia Late Summer. If you don't know, Damp Virginia is a small coal mining town in Virginia, southwest Virginia. And the poem's kind of about that town. And Woman with Black Balloons, another interesting poem by Jean Wagner, or Jean Wagner, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. But she kind of starts talking about these balloons, and all of a sudden she starts getting into something else. And that's kind of what's going to happen with a lot of these poems. It kind of starts with a familiar object and it starts moving into something a little bit different. And The Dog in the Night's another interesting poem. You can kind of see how you might organize your essay. If you're going to go stanza by stanza, which I would recommend for something like Virginia Late Summer. And again, a stanza is the collection of lines there. So we got a 5-line stanza, then another stanza 2 here, stanza 3. So you might have just a 5-paragraph essay with each paragraph going through each stanza. And that might be an easy way to organize this essay if you're doing Damp Virginia Late Summer. Same way with The Woman with Black Balloons. You got 1 stanza, 2 stanzas. You want to spend a little time with this 1-line stanza. Why does she put that line there all by itself? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas. So again, you might have a 6-paragraph essay with each paragraph talking about 1 stanza. The Dog in the Night is something kind of different. It's just 1 long stanza, so you're going to have to figure out where your paragraph's going to be with your essay and how you're going to break that up a little bit. So there's a few more decisions to make there. Another fascinating poem. It kind of starts off just talking about a car accident, then starts relating it to her father, then Greek mythology, and all of them, another dog, and it's just a fascinating poem. But as you read through these poems, some of these you're going to look at and go like, no. But hopefully by the time you get to them, you find 1 or 2 you're like, I can work with that, or I'm kind of interested in learning more about that one. If you don't do that, you need to go back and find the one you hate the least, I guess. Numerology is talking about turning 7 years old. Kind of interesting little poem there, and what it's like to be a 7-year-old. The Descent by William Carlos Williams, probably the most ambiguous poem here. Some people love this kind of poetry where you kind of get to the end, it's like, I'm not sure what it means, but I really like it. And other people are like, no. Not so much, right? But it's also a visual poem too. You can kind of see he's playing with the indentation and things like that. So one is kind of hard to read at first. You have to read it a couple of times. We're talking about memory and aging and things like this. To me, that's a really, really interesting poem. I can always get good essays on it. But it's not an easy one. So like I said, if you read it and you kind of go like, I have no clue, move on to the next one. Don't force yourself to like a poem. It won't work that well. This be the simile. This is an anonymous poem. When it says with apologies to Philip Larkin, that's kind of an homage to a different Philip Larkin poem called This Be the Verse, kind of saying this poem was kind of inspired by a poem Philip Larkin wrote. He did not write this poem. This one's a little shorter. That doesn't make the essay easier. You got to get 800 words. So if you're good at unfolding things and expanding on what you're thinking, this might be a good poem to work with. If you struggle with that, this one might be a little harder. It's shorter, and a lot of students want to latch onto this one first, but it's not the easiest one to write about. Demolition Derby. This is one by Sherman Pearl. He likes to write about relationships between himself or persona and their son. Again, it's just 1 long stanza, so you're going to have to figure out where you're going to break the lines here. And again, something like This Be the Simile, you may just have a 3-paragraph essay. And we'll talk about the format of the essay here in a second. But Demolition Derby is just one long stanza. You got to figure out where you're going to break this stuff up and where the natural breaks within the poem happen. Then another one by Sherman Pearl called Basic Training. Again, it kind of starts off about basic training, and all of a sudden, right in the middle here, makes his son reference, and all of a sudden you're like, well, who's this? All of a sudden there's another person in the poem, and you're wondering what they're doing there. You got to kind of figure that out. Again, this one would be kind of fairly easy to organize with your essay. Spend a paragraph on each stanza. So it kind of depends on what you get into, which poem you kind of want to work with. Like I said, which poem you hate the least. But you got 8 to choose from, and you only get to choose 1 poem. Don't try and do more than 1, or that's just going to be a disaster. To get into what an explication should look like, you got a handout. Whoops, sorry. On the content page about how to write a good poetry explication. I don't want to read this whole thing to you, but you want to print the poem so you can start making commentary. go through all the words. Any words you don't know, you want to look up. You can't just say, I don't know what that word means, and go on with your explication. You're the authority here. This is your informed response. You got to be informed, right? The big one, let me see if I can make that bigger for you. There's no formal introduction paragraph or concluding paragraph to this explication. You're not going to start off with, since the dawn of time, poetry has, tortured students and or anything like that. You're going to start with the first line of the poem and get straight to it. All you got to do is say in his poem, Basic Training, in the first line, Sherman Pearl says, yada, yada, yada. Then start talking about the poem. Same thing at the end. You're not going to do a concluding paragraph. You're not going to go back and tell us what you've already said. You're going to end with the last line of the poem. Give it a good ending sentence, and then you're done. That's a little different from things you've probably done before, but it's a good way to force students to get rid of the fluff and get straight to your analysis of the poem. Excuse me. Again, I'd kind of recommend going stanza by stanza if you can. Get some of those poems are just one long stanza, so you got to go line by line. But you're going to go in as much as a straight line as possible. Try not to get halfway through and go, oh yeah, in line 1 this happened or something like that. That you don't want to make the reader jump around. You're kind of taking the reader through the poem and you're unfolding the poem as we go. So try not to jump around. Make sure you make the requirements there. You want to use frequent short quotes for a good sense of example. If you're going to tell me Damp Virginia Late Summers about Obamacare, I'm going to be very interested to see how you support that with quotes from the from the poem. And also, this poem was written before Obama was president, so it's going to be a little difficult. So it's your informed response, but you're going to kind of gauge how well you're doing by being able to support what you're saying using short quotes from the poem for support, and also to keep the reader focused on what you're saying as well. As you cite, you're going to be using the line number instead of page number. So if you do print out the poem, you want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and number all the lines, because that's what you're going to be citing within the body of your work. Stay focused on the poem. You can go off on a tangent a little bit, like if you're going to do that basic training poem and you've been through basic training, you might talk about whether this sounds authentic or anything else, something like that to you. But you don't want to suddenly make the entire essay about you being in basic training. That's not the point. You want to stay focused on the poem and make sure you're keeping us focused on that. Always introduce your quotes and always comment on your quotes. Quotes do not say things for you. They support what you're saying, right? So be careful there. That's something we've been working on all semester, and we want to keep doing that. You're going to find that brackets and ellipses are your friends with this one. If you need to change a quote so it makes grammatical sense with what you're saying, brackets and ellipses are going to go a long way to help you do that. And again, you want to end the explication with the last line of the poem or one final thought, not a summary of what you've already said, but you're going to see with the Frost explication that we're about to look at, that writer ties the poem back to the title, but the writer's not summarizing everything you've already said in the poem, hopefully. But no concluding paragraph, no intro paragraph, and again, that makes those 800 words a little bit harder to get to. Also, no biography makes those 800 words a little bit hard to get to. All the ways students kind of fluff up an essay, you're kind of being denied a little bit here. Sorry about that. But it's also an excellent writing exercise here. It's not something students normally voluntarily do, but so I'm going to say it's very much a very intense sentence structure effort, especially when you start putting the quotes in there. I'm going to get a drink of water. Alrighty. This Frost explication is a sample explication here. If you've never read The Road Not Taken, it's in our textbook, I'm pretty sure. Or you can find it online. You might want to read the poem real quickly so this makes a little more sense. But you're going to notice Robert Frost, a very famous American poet, but no biography. We don't care that he was at President Kennedy's inauguration or he won this award or that award or whatever. We're focused on only the poem. And there's no introduction paragraph. The writer starts off in the first stanza of his poem, The Road Not Taken. Robert Frost presents a scene familiar to all people through the persona of a traveler. You don't have to highlight your use of the literary terms here. I've just done it for emphasis. And our traveler uses first-person narration to present us with the metaphor of two roads diverging in a yellow wood. Notice, got to get straight into the poem, starting with line 1. Going to use quotes to support what the writer's saying. Also getting all the fun punctuation in there and everything. Notice the brackets, changing the verb a little bit so it makes grammatical sense with the introduction to the quote. So, it seems kind of simple at first, but it's actually technically fairly complex writing. So now if you're struggling a little bit, once you get into it, it's like, that might be wise. It's not as easy as it first sounds. But once you give the quote, you want to comment on what the quote is saying. Two roads diverging in a yellow wood is a metaphor that represents the proverbial fork in the road we all encounter when making a life decision. In lines 2 and 3, we find out our traveler must make a choice and cannot remain static. I could not travel both and be one traveler. I stopped in the middle of the line there, so I'm going to use ellipses. But notice we're citing using line number. This one is line 1. You can give the line numbers this way within the introduction to the quote. It's good to kind of mix that up a little bit so you don't just kind of fall into a monotonous pattern. And then I'm going to talk about that quote, and I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. You can kind of get the idea. But going through the poem, don't skip anything. If there's a color in there, in poetry, colors are very significant, and you want to kind of explain what you think that color's there. So like in A Woman with Black Balloons, you got to get into what we use black balloons for. If you haven't had your 40th or 50th birthday, you may have never received black balloons, but it's kind of a dark, almost grotesque joke about how close you are to getting to death. That's why we use black balloons, right? And that's kind of what she kind of gets into within her poem, probably. Again, there's no one answer to all these poems. I deliberately picked ambiguous poems so I get different types of essays that don't just say the same thing, which can also be frustrating. This isn't a math problem, right? But you're going to see the writer here gets into the color yellow and kind of tells us what the color yellow might mean and what it means within the context of the poem. Then we're getting towards the end of the first stanza when one of the roads bends under the undergrowth, and just kind of making sure you're using quotes to support what you're saying, and then commenting on those quotes so you can see why those quotes are within your essay. But one of the main points of this explication is going to be that these two roads are equal. When you're first making your decision, you don't know which road is going to be the better one. So it's kind of an interesting poem in that sense. A lot of people say, it's all about the road, taking the road less traveled, and that makes all the difference. But really, when you look in the poem, the roads are exactly the same when the writer's making their decision. Then just going to go into the second stanza, and again, I'm going to quit reading this word for word. But again, citing using line number, using frequent short quotes to support what you're saying, then commenting on those quotes once you give them. You use slash to show line breaks within short quotes. That's what this little slash is doing there. I should also be doing that with short quotes from verse drama when you talk about Oedipus. And again, you're going to notice these brackets and ellipses are going to be your new friends within this. It just helps you keep quotes manageable and also keep them grammatically correct. But I'm going to skip on down. But you're going to notice there's no concluding paragraph. It kind of takes us back to the title a little bit, but the author's not summarizing what the entire essay just said. Please don't do that. And of course, if it's a published poem, you want a works digest page for it. If it's an unpublished poem, you do not need to put that poem on a works digest page. A couple of poems like The Road Damp Virginia Late Summer and This Be the Simile are not published, so you don't need a works digest page for those, but the rest you do. But that's what the explication will look like. And again, it's just no research here. I'm not sure it makes the essay any easier. But again, this is probably critical thinking that you've done before. If you're a computer analyst, somebody who analyzes computers, analysis, anyway, you kind of got to explicate your way through the system when there's a glitch and try and unfold the system and figure out where that problem is and how everything works. That's kind of what we're doing within a poem. So good critical thinking exercise. If you have questions as you're working on it, be sure and let me know. But I'm going to get off here. Bye-bye.